Even though you think PPT might be an abbreviation for PowerPoint, here we're going to look at what a precipitate is and look at some key terminology you should be familiar with when describing this. Alright, so what's a precipitate? Well, a precipitate is a solid that forms and separates from a solution during a chemical reaction, usually when two aqueous solutions are mixed and an insoluble compound is produced. So here we see two aqueous solutions being mixed together, an aqueous solution and a solid being formed. That would be an example of the precipitate. So you can have two liquids, mix them together, and you can, in some chemical reactions, result in a solid forming. That would be your example of your precipitate. Other key terms you should be aware of is something called a supernatant, which is the clear liquid remaining above the precipitate after it kind of settles, and the suspension, which is a mixture where the precipitate particles are dispersed but haven't quite yet settled. So typically when you mix these two together, you'll get that kind of suspension that occurs, and over time or through when you centrifuge it, you can get the precipitate to form at the bottom there, that solid form, and then you've got your supernatant above. Sometimes in descriptions it'll say pour off the supernatant. That means pour off the liquid and do something with either that liquid or that solid that is left behind. Now, what causes a precipitate to form? Well, it could be a simple precipitate reaction, when two soluble ionic compounds react in solution and form an insoluble product. And that insoluble product would be a solid form. There's also a solubility limit exceeded. If the concentration of a solute surpasses its solubility, it may crystallize out, causing it to fall out of solution, and that would be an example of a precipitate. There could also be environmental changes, such as temperature, pH, or solvent changes that can reduce solubility and trigger precipitation. This can occur from the evaporation of a solvent, increasing its concentration, therefore causing it then to fall out of solution and accumulate at the bottom in a solid form of the container. An example of a precipitate reaction here, where we've got mixing silver nitrate and sodium chloride in water. Here's the kind of chemical equation right here. We can see a nice visual of that right here. Right below me was essentially pouring in aqueous silver nitrate. Here we're seeing it come in contact with a aqueous sodium chloride solution, and silver chloride is the precipitate, which is a white solid that forms and settles out of solution. So kind of a neat little reaction here with a nice blue background, but you can clearly see two liquids coming in contact with one another, forming this solid in this aqueous solution, causing it to fall out of solution, and therefore we then have our precipitate.